Hey, it's Tim here. Today, I'm doing something very different. I'm starting my learning journey on a database called Snowflake, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if maybe I just shared my learning journey with you right from the start? So at this point, I'm about a week in to being familiar with Snowflake. I've literally never touched any other database in my life other than working with it in Tableau. And so if you're here because you want to know more about Snowflake and you want to hear that from someone who knows something, this is not the right place. This is very much going to be a series of me essentially just bumbling my way through Snowflake and learning as I go, and essentially sharing that experience with you once a week. So yeah, once a week, I'll basically share what I've learned and what I've done with Snowflake. It's a nice way to keep me honest, actually, so that I have to share something every week. That means I have to learn something every week. Siri's trying to learn with me here. And the other thing is, I think it's just interesting to be able to plot the learning journey. I never got a chance to plot that journey with Tableau because I sort of started at a point where I hadn't really thought about that question. And now that I know how important it is to sort of plot your learning journey as you go along, so you can see when you learn certain concepts or certain important things, I think this is a really useful way to do it. So me making a video is very much just me sharing that process. So I know this won't be for everyone. I totally appreciate that. It might be only for the few people out there. But if you're learning Snowflake and you're also going down the same journey, then you can join along hopefully once a week to find out how this journey goes. I'm literally going to start by going through a resource I found on the Snowflake website. So just to give you an example, I'm on the Snowflake homepage here. Over here in resources, they have a bunch of resources, and one of the guides here, if I go to the guides page, we'll see it loads up, and they have these guides, which are really, really good. And the guide that I'm going to be following, at least for the next few videos, will be this one, Getting Started with Snowflake, Zero to Snowflake. And essentially it's a 12-part guide. They give you some resources, and it's based on the 30-day trial. Now, I'm also going to start on the 30-day trial, but I'm actually going to continue using it into a paid model because I actually have a lot of my own data sources that I'd like to store somewhere, especially around quantified self data. So what I'm going to be doing is in these first 30 days, I'm just going to be getting to know the database, getting to know how it all works. Then I'll be loading my own data into Snowflake, and that's what I'll use sort of going forward. Who knows, in the future, maybe I'll even open up a particular part of Snowflake to you, the community, to have a go at and run my credit cards to the ground. So I need to learn a lot about Snowflake before I do that. But other than that, yeah, this is it. This is going to be the journey. So I'll go back to the homepage, and all I'm going to do in this video is set up a trial. We're going to connect it to Tableau because, of course, that's what I know. And we're going to try and sort of just find our way around the interface. Then in the next video, I'll actually start working through this guide in a meaningful way. Okay, so let's go back to the homepage and let's just set up a trial account. So this is something anyone can do. They've got a free 30-day trial. What I'd recommend is don't start your trial unless you have 30 days to really invest in this. I do because I'm partly learning this to try and go for certification, but also it's something that we're getting very comfortable with in other contexts. So it's really important just to bear that in mind. Don't start a 30-day trial if you're just going to sit on it for 20 days and not use it. Watch a video, learn as much as you can from other people. Then when you have 30 days to invest in this in your business or in personally, then start the trial, really learn it, and try and get as much as you can out of it. Okay, so enough talking. Let's kick off our trial. I'm just going to go to the homepage here, start the free trial. I have actually previously created another account, but that was in a completely different context. So this is going to be my own personal instance that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to have to block out some of this information here so that you don't see that. I'm just going to be entering some information here, and I'm actually going to be using this as if I'm a company, if that makes sense, because I have another use case for this, which is I have a lot of metadata that's created from all my YouTube videos and everything like that. So what I'd actually like to do is load some of that metadata into something like Snowflake, somewhere central, so that it can be used by lots of other things. So that will include talking to things like the YouTube API. It will include metadata that comes out of my video editing software. It will also include metadata about the files that I'm using behind the scenes, and basically just knowing where it all is, and then also knowing where it's stored. So essentially, I'd like to store that metadata somewhere structured so that I can easily search it, find it, and should something ever happen to all of this stuff, then I can have a very good sort of snapshot of what is where and the information that's sitting behind all this. It's also a nice way of thinking about making your content portable. Let's say one day I decide to move all my content off YouTube. Having the data ready to go in Snowflake will make it very easy for me to pivot to another system that will drive the same thing you've seen everywhere using a different database. Not necessarily Snowflake, but it will just make it a nice central place to keep it. So that's sort of where my thinking is. I don't really know where I'm going to take this, but for now, let's just use it and use it as if we are setting it up like a company. So let's go ahead and continue. You get a couple of options here to choose your Snowflake edition. Now, I don't really know, what's going on. So I'm going to start with standard. I'm not going to kick off like an enterprise trial or anything like that. And this is not really business critical, seeing as this information I've kind of lived without it, as it were. So at least in these 30 days, I don't need anything serious. If I have to change that, obviously, we'll do another video and we'll talk a bit about that. One of the nice things is that Snowflake lets you choose which cloud you run on. Now, they're very much not supporting the private cloud concept. They've very much gone for the public cloud concept. They've sort of, hedge their bets on that. So you get a choice, actually. Now, a few years ago when I used Snowflake very, very briefly, just as a database to connect to it in Tableau, you only had AWS, but recently they've brought on Google Cloud Platform and Microsoft Azure, which makes it a nice cloud agnostic platform, which is really nice to sort of see. So let's go ahead and choose AWS. The reason I'm choosing AWS because that is literally the thing I know the most. So if I'm going to be working with it, that's what I'm going to use. I also have a lot of information on Amazon S3, which I store information like my podcast is stored on AWS on S3. And I'm going to use Ireland as my zone because, again, that's where lots of the stuff that I already store in AWS is stored. So we're just going to try and see how that goes. And of course, if anything is wrong with this, then I'll obviously have the learning challenge of changing these things at some point. I'm assuming that's possible, so we'll just have to figure out how to do that. So let's get started. Now, the next thing it will do is account setup is in progress. I think this happens very, very quick. They have a getting started video, some virtual hands-on. The account is created. I'll just blank out my email in this particular section. Full Snowflake documentation. Now, I don't know about you, but I never read documentation. I normally go straight into these things and hope that there's some sort of starter template or starter database that I can just connect to. And of course, I use Tableau, so I'm not going to be querying data. I'm just going to open up Tableau, see if I can connect to it in this video, and then we'll just see sort of what everything is about and start to get our feel around the platform. Just sort of mess around initially before we open up documentation and see how it goes. So there we go. We've sent an email to my email. So let me just open up a new tab and go to my email. My other email here is a Gmail email. So let's just go to that. I'll blank out this bit because there's a lot of personal information on the screen and I want to make sure that it's not shared with everyone. So here's the email. Basically, my account is ready to go. Click here to activate it. I think they're just making sure I'm a legitimate human being, not just spinning up lots of AWS clusters. And now, here's the thing. I've already created an account before on another account trial, which has not necessarily ended. That's sort of in a work context, essentially. So I'm not going to be using that. I'm going to use my own setup. So I'm going to blank out everything here if you're wondering why it's all faded out. So there we go. Finally got it. Let's get started. So yeah, we've created our account. You'll notice a few things straight away. Let me just add this to my password. When we log in, it's really obvious sort of where everything is because you see here you get some sort of EU West 1. This is essentially calling out the AWS zone that I think your Snowflake instance is running on. I think it uses the same naming structure as AWS essentially in that case. And then you also have your own sort of Snowflake instance here as well that's at the top. I'm going to blank out sort of the first part of that just so that it's not shared with everyone. And yeah, you get this really nice welcome guide that basically kind of gets you to try and do a few things. I'm actually going to minimize this because I know this is actually available to me later on. If I actually close that and go to help here, you can see that you get this sort of nice sort of getting started panel. And if you go to that show help panel and take a tour, it actually gets you back to this getting started page. So I know I've got this available to me. We'll try it a little later on once I've got going. But I just want to connect to this in Tableau. I want to see if there's a database that I can work with, ready to go, a template one that I can work with, and just see if everything's connecting up and running okay. So let's go ahead and minimize this. It's calling out at me left, right, and center. And you can see here we do actually get some information. We've got a demo DB. If I click on that, and let's just go into each of these and see what's going on. We get a few bits of information. Let's just go to this other Snowflake sample data. Here we go. I think this is actually what I'm interested in. We've got this sort of sample data, and I believe these are basically different sort of working at different scales. So the first one is a very small data set. I think we're talking about 1,000 rows. This is about 10,000 and so on and so forth. And I think the 100 one is actually 1 million records. And this one's like 1 billion and so on and so forth. And then there's some really large data. And then there's obviously this weather database here, which gives you lots of different levels of granularity of information, which is also kind of handy. So you can get a nice feel for lots of different situations here, but they've loaded it up with something that we can sort of get to grips with and start to understand, okay, which is good. I really like that. If we just browse around, at the top we've got databases, which shows us the 3 databases we just saw. We've got a utility database, a demo database. I think the utility database basically has information about essentially, well, doesn't have anything in here right now at the moment, no tables, no views, but I think it has information about our Snowflake instance essentially. So again, I don't know what I'm talking about, so I just hope that's correct. If I go to shares, I think what happens here is you can share parts of your data with other people, and then they can go and essentially use that data, but they're using the data on your Snowflake instance. So the use case here would be, imagine you wanted to share data with, let's say you're a bank and you want to share data with a credit reference agency. Now, what you don't want to do is send them a CSV file or send them the hard files, because what they'll do is they'll ingest that into their database and it becomes their data. So what you can do with Snowflake Shares is you can essentially give that credit reference agency access to your Snowflake instance to run certain computations. Then you can see what they're querying, you can see what they're using, and you can sort of control that with all the same permissions that you'd like to use. So I think that's what that is. Data marketplace, I assume this is for Snowflake partners and other sort of hook-ins to connect to Snowflake warehouses. This is, I don't really know what warehouses are, but I think this is to do with the infrastructure that sits behind your Snowflake database essentially. So they have sort of varying levels of sort of performance and compute, which is what it's called in computer terms. So that's something that we can look at a little later on. Worksheets, I guess this is where you run your queries. I'm assuming that's what it is. And the history tab, which just shows us everything that's happening. But of course, we've not done anything, so we can't really see anything here. And at the moment, I'm at sysadmin level. I can obviously go to a much higher level, but this is pretty much everything I need to know. There's nothing else here that I sort of really need to worry about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave everything as is. I'm not going to close this trial notification. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to fire up Tableau and see if we can connect to this straight away. Now, one thing I will say is that when we connect to Snowflake, there is sometimes a couple of things that we need to sort of make sure we do. The one thing that I noticed with Tableau, if I just go to the Tableau tab, you can see I'm sort of like a deer in headlights here. If I just go to Tableau Snowflake driver, the first time I did this, I can't remember the exact steps I did off the top of my head, but you actually have to go and make sure that you've got the driver installed. It's not just something that comes pre-installed with Tableau. So you just go to driver download page, and you essentially download the driver, but you have to download it from a specific place in Snowflake. So it's not something that Tableau have available here. So if I just go to Snowflake down here, I'm on a Mac on a 64-bit, you'll see here that you sign into your Snowflake instance, select help, download an ODBC driver. So that's where I was trying to go to. So Snowflake help, download, and then you've got your ODBC driver and JDBC driver if you want to, but ODBC driver is there, and you can download the specific one you want. In this case, I just clicked on this one for Mac, and I went to Mac 64, and I downloaded the latest driver, which is a 2.23 here. And once you've downloaded that and installed that ODBC driver, everything will work pretty easily, okay? And so once you're done with that, you just basically go back to your Snowflake instance. So here we are, and essentially you need a couple of bits of information. You need to know your username, your password, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and just try that. So let's just open up Tableau. if I can actually spell it, Tableau 2020.4. That's what I'm going to use for this one. It's actually quite interesting. In 2021.1, there's going to be the addition of Snowflake spatial support. So once I've got my ducks in a row, we'll obviously show that feature at some point. So let's go over here to a server. Let's select Snowflake and let's see what it asks for. And then we'll go to Snowflake and see if we can find that information. So let's just wait and see. So here you can see I've got some information from a previous bit of stuff that I did. So let's just remove all of that and let's just go grab our server. So our server, I'm assuming our server is indeed this one here at the top. So I'm just gonna grab this. I'm just gonna have a guess and say, okay, this is the server, and I hope this is right. If it's not right, then we might have to go and try some of that tutorial content that they've got. Username for this one, I think I'm going to be this one, Tableau Tim TN-MD, and the password is going to be, I think, this one. Okay, let's hit enter, hit sign in, and we'll just wait for this to load, and boom, there we go, that worked. So it's pretty straightforward. Of course, I've set up the free trial, so there's no permissions or anything to worry about. And so here I can select my warehouse. You can see here I've only got the one warehouse. So that kind of leads me to believe that if I go in here, I can actually set up different warehouses over time. So here I've got this particular warehouse. It's an X small and it's got an auto suspend of 10 minutes. So, okay, I'm starting to get more about this. So essentially what happens is the data is stored in one place, but then when you need to access that data, it uses a compute system, and the compute system is based on this concept of warehouses. Now, I can set up multiple warehouses to connect to the same data. And so what that allows me to do is say gives an analytics team really powerful access to this because they need to do lots of computations very, very quickly. I can give a data science team separate access to the same data using a separate warehouse. And that will essentially mean two things. Number one, I can monitor how it's being used very, very easily. But also it means that those two teams won't ever clash on resources. If they're doing work at the same time, maybe the analytical team is doing business critical work, whereas the data science team is doing exploratory work. So it needs to run really big queries on data, and we need to make sure that that doesn't take down the work that analytical team is doing. Essentially what you can do is you can set up different warehouses essentially that all have different sort of levels of computing, and I'm not going to go ahead and create anything ridiculous here because some of these get pretty expensive. Now the credit system, I don't know too much about pricing, so of course we'll find that out. Maybe I'll try and cover that in the next 3 videos, but essentially here we're on X small, which is 1 credit per hour essentially, and 2 credits per hour. So and these credits refer to how long you've been running them. So you can set something up. We can set something like, let's set up medium here, and let's call this medium, and we'll call this medium underscore. I don't think it likes hyphen, so let's just try this. No, it does like underscores. It doesn't mind underscores, so let's just call medium warehouse. Auto suspend of 10 minutes. Essentially, if it's idle for 10 minutes, it will automatically stop. You can set that to a lower number. I'll set that to 5. It's just me using this, so if I'm not doing something for 5 minutes, that's fine. But you got to be careful, because if it takes 5 minutes, if after 5 minutes it kills it, but then it takes 2 minutes to fire it up, you're being charged for that 2 minutes. And so you might just want to tweak that. So I might just leave this to default just to make sure that I don't sort of do something that seems unreasonable. The defaults normally tend to make sense. So let's just hit finish. And then you'll see here that I have 2 warehouses. This won't turn up in Tableau until I've actually refreshed this connection. So it's there, and you'll see that it's started. It's currently active. I'd actually now like to use that because it's active. So what I'll do is I'll edit the connection. We'll go in here, sign in again. And what that will do is it should refresh this list. There you go, we've got the medium warehouse, and now you can see I created a new warehouse, and we're pretty much good to go. So now if I select a database, it's going to be the same data that's available. I haven't created a new database, I just selected a new warehouse. And so if I go to the Snowflake sample data, I think this is where we have the sample data that we can sort of use, and we can just get going essentially. So yeah, this is the data at sort of different levels. I'll connect to the 100, and that's the one with sort of, I think, 1 million rows of data. And you can see here that we have a very simple data set. So what I'm going to do in Tableau is I'm just going to try and create like a data model just to sort of work with and see how this works. So let's just have a look at this. We've got We've got orders. So if I just drag that in, I always start with the orders database because that seems to be always like a really sort of standard data set. So we've got an order key, customer key, and order status. And there's no other key there. So we've just got two sort of keys here, order key. So let's try and see what else we can use. So the customer, let's bring the customer, and I'm assuming the customer key is going to be the same in both of those. So let's go ahead and select those two, C and O customer key. Perfect. Let's close that. So now we've got our first data model there. If I select the customer table, we can see here the customer key is in there. We've used that already. We've got a nation key. So let's go ahead and get the nation table and just let's connect that up. And that's just where I tend to build data models. I just tend to connect them up like this because it sort of makes the most sense. And then if there's something wrong, I just start taking them apart. So nation key is there. I can see there's a region key and the nation key. So let's go ahead and grab the region and put that there. This might be completely the wrong way to do this, but as I just said, this is how I just like to sort of create these and just play with them. So we've got orders, customer, nation, and region. That's 4 tables done already. The other thing we had is we had an order key. And so let's look at this line item table to see if we have anything there before I drag it in. It will obviously do some querying. And now all of this should be pinging my Snowflake instance essentially. So if I just sort of look at this, I want to see if there's an order key column here that I can relate to. There's a comment. There we go. There's an order key just there. So I think we can use that order key to essentially bring in the line items for this particular order. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's just put this here on a new sort of logical layer, as it were. So we're going to get the order key and we're going to connect it with the line item order key. And that should be that. Okay. And so the line item has a part key and a supplier key. So here we go. We can actually bring these two separately. So the part key, I think I'm going to put this here, and the part key, if we just make sure this actually lines up with this and just close that. So I'm just creating a relationship essentially. And then there seems to be a supplier list and there's a separate part supplier list. So the line item and supply key. So what I think is the supplier here refers to the line item. So if I bring the supplier just there, and we just basically say that the line item supplier key is equal to the what is this? The supplier key. Okay. It's kind of weird namings, right? So I think that's how it works. And then the part supplier key goes right here, because I think the parts can be provided by a different supplier, and the line item itself can come from a different supplier. So the best way to think of this is, listen, you could buy your line item from a wholesaler who is a supplier, but then that item might be made from a range of parts that come from different part suppliers. Okay, so I think that's how this is working. So let's say the part key and is part supplier key is there, and then interestingly, there's another one which is PS supplier key, and so I think actually this might create a bit of a weird reference, because I think the sub key here, if I just update this now just so I can get this information, supplier key over here I think can also relate to the supplier key over here. So let's just have a quick preview of that by hitting update now. And yeah, so it does look like they are completely different keys. To be honest, I won't really know until I go into Tableau. So there's my model. I'm not sure this is even right. If I was doing this for real, I'd probably spend a lot more time. Now, all of this has been hitting the Snowflake database. We almost forgot this was a Snowflake video. So let's go back here and let's have a look at our history and see what's been going on. So the last time this was refreshed was 908. Let's just refresh that and let's see what's been going on. Wow, so there we go. All that work has been sort of triggering requests into Snowflake, and you can immediately see what's going on. You can see we're working on the medium warehouse here. You can see the duration of some of these query. If I go into some of these query, you can see that this is essentially the queries that I'm running as I create the relationships. Essentially, Tableau is sort of looking at everything, and it's limiting it to 1,000 rows, because that is actually, if I just sort of collapse my browser and just annotate to here, you can see that this limit is essentially this 1,000 rows item here. So really cool that you can see all this stuff. It's funny because you can do all this in performance recording in Tableau, but it's also nice to see it here in Snowflake, so you can actually see what the database sees from Tableau. So something that not many people do quite often. So you can see that I created my medium compute when I connected initially, and then I created the medium warehouse, but initially I connected to the normal compute. Now there was a little bit something strange going in here initially. I don't know what that status means. I'll have to dig into that at some point in the future. But you can see here the sort of scale of the data that's being scanned. It's kind of interesting. There's actually quite a lot of information. So let's go into Tableau and just see how many rows of data this actually is. The best way to do this is to actually maybe just go to the order table and just let's see if we can do a count of orders here and see how many rows come back. So 150 million rows. That's crazy. So 150 million orders on the orders table alone. And then obviously as we start to bring a few other things out, then it's going to get even more and more busy. So lots and lots of data here. But this isn't the purpose of this. I just wanted to sort of, connect to it in Tableau and just see sort of how it worked. What we can do is we can start to maybe try and build some things. So let's just see how many orders come into different countries. So let's go ahead and drag nation name into this query, and we'll just wait for it to run on 150 million rows. This is querying live over the AWS infrastructure. And you can see that it's generally speaking roughly 5 million rows per country, which is actually fairly realistic in this set. And then what we can do is we can maybe also grab the region and just break that down by region. I think the region is going to be more of a continent rather than like a nation. So if I just put that in front of the nation name and get that query running again, hopefully we'll get something a little bit more useful. And there we go. Yes, I was right. The region is more of a continent item, and then everything else is just to do with the order. And so what is interesting here is we can actually start to see how this works in real life. So you can see here I'm connected live. I'm not doing an extract or anything. If I tried to take an extract, that would sort of be, a really expensive extract on 150 million rows. So the sort of benefit here is to not take an extract, try and use the power of Snowflake to, get it to perform really, really quick. And if it's not quick enough, up your compute and get it working even faster, okay? So that you're spending less time querying. And now if I update this, we should see a few more of my queries. So previously I was down here, and now you can see that this is up there. You can even see the ODBC version of the driver I have installed. You can see I had 2.23. Obviously, you can see who's querying it. It's just me. There's no one else on this instance. So that's pretty much it. So yeah, really cool. That's all I wanted to do in this video. Set up the trial, connect to it in Tableau, and see what it was spawning in the background. And so this is a Snowflake instance I'm going to keep for good, even past the trial. So I'll become a paying customer and see how this goes. Because as I said, I have a lot of my own data that I'd love to store in here and start to see how I use that more efficiently. Okay, so that's it for this video. I think I'm going to stop here because so far this has been a pretty nice process, and what I don't want to do is start bumbling around everywhere. In the next video, what I will probably do is I'll start working through this guide and trying to sort of really get to grips with what they've sort of showed. What I'll probably do is I'll probably structure a video that isn't boring, just me reading this guide. So what I'll try and do is probably go through the guide maybe offline, and then once I'm familiar with the guide and I've done it once, I can actually go through it in earnest. So I'll read the guide, understand what I'm going to go through, and then we'll actually record the video and go through that. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. If you'd be interested to keep watching these videos and learn more about Snowflake as I do that myself, then great. I'm trying to work up to a Snowflake certification of some sort. I always don't think certifications are necessary, but they are a nice milestone to sort of mark your understanding of a particular topic, and it's good to have some sort of incentive to sort of try and do something. So yeah, this is it. I'm sort of holding myself to account here publicly. So if you don't see another video from me in a week's time about Snowflake, then by all means get in my inbox, complain to me that I haven't launched a video. And yeah, that's it. If you've enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Please like, subscribe, share this video with anyone you think might find it useful. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next video. All right, take it easy.